Hello, sir. Good afternoon. We're just waiting for everybody else to come in. 2:30.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Great.
Loud and clear.
And you are also audible, looking great.
Thank you, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hi. Sound check, everything okay?
Yes, yeah, perfectly audible.
So push off for 5 minutes and then get back. I think this is early.
Yes, ma'am. It's 15 minutes, almost 13 minutes early.
Who's Adarsha Kapoor Creative? That's your better half, is it?
Yes.
Okay, and Nishant Upadhyay, who's that?
Nishant is a conservation architect,
Okay,
and we have Dr. Ajay Khare. And
right, I'm introducing him. He's School of Planning and Architecture, no?
yes,
Right, and Vishal and Ankur. Okay.
I will others. We're just waiting for everybody else to come in.
Yeah. How are you doing? All safe from COVID?
So far, so good.
Really. It's been really sad, but almost in every family we know, colleagues, nobody has remained untouched. It's tough.
We're just getting into the hang of hearing the words so far, good with positive light.
So, National Monuments Authority is mentioned on page 2 of your codes. So, उनका क्या role रहेगा इसमें? What do you think?
Ma'am, right now तो role नहीं है, but they have a similar application. They are also preparing bylaws for area around the monument. There are certain number of overlaps in terms of parameters, especially where document 3B is concerned in terms of height regulation, in terms of material palette, color in the surrounding. In fact, we also looked at Bombay's Mumbai's Heritage Conservation Committee's norms. They are also actually along the same lines, where the aesthetic controls and volumetric controls are concerned. Ajay sir, this is Vinita ma'am.
Sir, I'm ED Heritage, Vinita Srivastav.
Pardon me, I have to learn this introduction part of it much better.
No, yeah, Zoom class fatigue has set in. The children are really irritated. So we should be.
And Ajay sir was a part of the National Monument Authority. He was a member.
I sat in that building for almost a year, sir. आपके सामने वाला जो नया ASI का बना था, National Mission on Cultural Mapping was there. So yeah. You're on mute, I think. So I'll take 5 minutes and get back, Sumi. तब तक आपके आ
Yes,
जाएंगे.
ma'am.
Right.
Hi, Soumya. Soumya, is this
Hello.
audible?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please change your background.
I'm trying, yes.
Yeah. If you're not able to do it, others will help you sort it out. Okay.
Sure, I'll just.
So in fact, there was a lot of participation in the morning from the architects, and architects and event planners, they took to the volumetric design. They saw through it, and we received quite a good lot of feedbacks from them. And so goes for green building norms. So, have you had the chance? Is there any feedback that we can talk about? Yes, ma'am.
Sood is opening, is it? No, director. Who's that?
Mr. R.K. Singh
Singh.
is going to start. Then we'll have Mr. Lohia give us an overview. So, sir will be giving us a presentation on the background and the overall vision. And then I scope in on the heritage portion. And then there's the roundtable.
Do you want some specific opening questions for everyone? I thought of a few.
Yes, ma'am.
Huh? So, like Singh sir is been Secretary of Culture, so we can ask him about the connect between Indian culture and industrial heritage.
Yes,
Then Khare sir from School of Planning and Architecture, maybe we can ask him about is railway architecture really a specific style in India? Hmm? And they can take it forward from. Are you comfortable with that, sir? Yeah. Okay. And Shikha has done lovely work for NRM, the Rail Museum. So maybe I can ask her a line about that. Abha ji has worked on Baikula, very wonderful. And Ashwarya Tipnis has done Darjeeling for us. So just ask brief specific questions and they can take it forward.
Yes.
5 मिनट देना है आपको सबको, है ना?
हाँ मैम, एक और चीज मैं बता देती हूँ कि जब हमने सर को भी जैसे ही इनवाइट भेजे, जैसे सर के लिए वन ऑफ द टॉपिक्स या टॉकिंग पॉइंट के हिसाब से हमने सोचा अगर सर अपने एक्सपीरियंस जो है रिगार्डिंग द एरिया लेवल मैनेजमेंट, बिकॉज अ लॉट ऑफ इट इज हाउ NMA has approached, what can we borrow from that exercise? If you could also shed some light on that.
So I'll start with area level management as his experience from NMA.
Secondly, where Dr. Jain's work is concerned, recently she's done this all India listing once of unprotected. तो उनसे बात करते हुए वो she actually mentioned a lot of interesting takebacks on how a change is required in terms of perceiving heritage and in terms of continuity, and why atrophy could be because we are also very regimental about a lot of things. So,
say that again. Why?
That, we are very regimental when it comes to approaching heritage. So how can we use other processes apart from grading to add value?
Okay.
So if she could actually also address this, whereas Abha Narayan Lamba and Aishwarya Tipnis, they have directly worked with railway heritage and you know it better.
Practitioners.
Yeah. And where Ms. Gurmeet Rai is concerned, she's worked on at a policy and then execution of the policy. So there is a gap between both of them. There's a little change needed. And she's actually very sound where material conservation, any kind of historic material is concerned, at a fabric level, estimates, building level. So if she could also be talking about this aspect, that every material in your railway heritage is different. It has to be very site specific. If she could talk about this.
ठीक है.
And when we had a word with Mr. Ravinder Singh, Sir has actually seen across the documents, and what he has given us feedback. One of his very important feedback was, you cannot look at it like a conventional monument. You have to understand that this is a transit. It is primarily a transit, so you have to allow necessary upgrade and changes. So he could be reiterating his earlier observation. Plus, there is a report that even Mr. Jain was a part of, that the Niti Aayog has just published. It's a white paper on working report on heritage management. There it actually looks at a lot of changes that are needed. So if you could include at least that report, because that's our one of our references.
So let me just rephrase that again very quickly. We're at 1428. For Singh Saab, the opening remark will be that with your background of secretary in the Ministry of Culture and your recent work with the Niti Aayog and the report published about heritage management, can you give us a perspective of a strategic approach towards this? Okay. Then for Khare sir, the same. The question you want me to ask is about his work in
NMA.
NMA and how the Monument Authority approach can be suitably adapted to railway heritage. Then उसके बाद किसका है गुरमीत जी का कि she's worked with materials and fabric and other details on the ground. So can you tell us how those approaches can be incorporated? ठीक है. Aishwarya, I know I'll talk about mostly Darjeeling as a practitioner, and then Baji, have I left out Shikha Jain? अच्छा नहीं ये रहा. Shikha is you said, just repeat what you said about Shikha ji.
Ma'am, she has worked on the report on
Report.
listing.
Done. ठीक. Yeah. Report on listing of heritage assets all across the country, including industrial heritage and railways.
Yes.
ठीक. And after that, they can take 5 minutes, and if they're taking longer, you butt in. You're right there.
You will have to button. They're all seniors.
अच्छा, मुझे 5 मिनट ऐसे मुझे हाथ हिला देना अगर लंबा चल रहा तो
Okay.
ठीक है चल
We already have Gurmeet Rai, who has just joined. I can see Dr. Huja. Hello, Dr. Huja. I can see a list of participants actually.
Oh.
Hi,
Gurmeet
all.
ma'am. Hi. Is this audible? Hi.
Yes, very much audible. Hi,
Hello.
Vinita, how are you?
I'm good. A long time.
Very long time.
Your smile is just as graceful. Lovely to see you.
Thank you. Good to be on this platform. I mean, I'm very impressed that you were talking about it, I think about a year and a half ago.
Oh, yeah. See, it takes that long.
When we've had a very strangely eventful year and a half. So, one can
What's your
understand.
daughter doing, ma'am? Is she still photographing things?
Yeah, both the girls. One, in fact, has a show in Gallery Espas next week. In fact, this week. And Avani is also busy with her photography and her filmmaking and so on.
Lovely. Aishwarya is here, I can see. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
You must be knowing each other, Gurmeet ma'am. Aishwarya.
Very well. She's my mentor.
And Khare sir is here, and I can see Singh Saab. Namaskar, sir.
Others, if everyone has joined, should we start? Others? MD sir, can we start, sir?
Yes, please. गुरमीत जी नमस्कार. अरविंद मायाराम साहब आपके बारे में बहुत तारीफ कर रहे थे. कहते you must have her on board. आपका म्यूट पे है.
हाँ, नहीं, thank you so much. Yes, we've had some. I mean, in fact, Aishwarya और मैं दोनों इकट्ठे ही थे on some of the projects we did for the Mint actually in
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was, thank you so much, and he's been very kind.
Great. ठीक है. RK, please start.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of IRSDC, that is RK Singh, Director Planning and Projects, welcome you all to the focused discussion on the codes for railway heritage assets adopted by IRSDC. I am happy to say that the codes that we have created comprises a robust set of frameworks, tools, guidelines, and codes for mainstreaming to address planning, conservation, and asset management of the Indian Railway and its heritage in an integrated and comprehensive manner. RSDC is headed by Sri Sanjeev Kumar Lohia as its MD and CEO. Sri Lohia is RSC 1986 batch, has vast experience in the transport and urban development sectors. He was the director in various metro rail corporations in India, and at MOUD he was instrumental for transforming the perception of urban transport in the country, from creating technical units to centers of excellence to developing various toolkits, guidelines, standardization around the country. At RSDC, Sri Lohia is leading the world's largest transit-oriented development and PPP program. Sri Lohia has also been a guest faculty at IIM Ahmedabad Center for Environment and Planning and Technology, that is CEPT Ahmedabad, and at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. I would now invite Sri Sanjeev Kumar Lohia, the MD and CEO of IRSDC, to welcome all participants and initiate this focused group discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, RK, for the introduction. A very, very warm welcome to all the panelists and all the participants for this very, very important path-breaking, I would say, consultation workshop for the railway heritage assets. Just give a brief background of what we are doing, why we are doing. I just got one message. Am I audible? Okay, great. Because Kalyani Roy said that I'm not audible. Great. So we are transforming the railway stations at par with airports, and our brief is to make money out of air and convert station at par with airports. So though this statement on the face of it looks a bit funny, but that exactly is the mandate, because we have to make money from not selling the land, the air rights that we have. So we have to use those air rights and convert the stations at par with airports, transform the customer experience. And essentially when we are doing that, so we are not only redeveloping the stations, we are also doing commercial development on the land beside the railway stations. And developing a Railopolis, a 24/7 city center. What we had been proposing or championing for last more than 5 years now. So a lot of those things I'm happy to share with you. They are reflected in Delhi Master Plan Vision also, a 24/7 city. So we had been championing 24/7 city, etc., etc. So all those things have been, I'm happy that they have been incorporated in Delhi Master Plan as well. So development in railway land is to happen under the Section 11 of Railway Act, generally following the National Transit Oriented Development Policy, so that the development in railway land is harmonious with the surrounding development. And we do it in consultation with the local bodies, other statutory authority. So if we have to, and we have to sanction approve the plans, and we have been approving our layout plans, building plans, and we also issued the occupancy certificate, which has happened for the first time in the history of Indian Railways in last 168 years. We have a detailed presentation which will be given by my colleagues slightly later, but that puts a huge amount of responsibility on us when we have to take up so many stations redevelopment in the country. So we must have certain norms on which these developments will happen. Towards that, We have developed handbook and guidebook for the development of stations, the guidebook for operationalization of the national TOD policy in railway land. We have also made codes which are essentially guided by the form-based codes which have been issued as advisory by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, the green building codes, the architectural codes, and also very, very important facet which we are going to discuss today, that is heritage, because when I said dance 8 years, so that is the rich heritage which Indian Railways has. And all those structures, stations, and besides stations, for example, in Gwalior, we have a office, which is in a very heritage building. So how exactly, because these are operational areas, so they are living heritage and working heritage. So it is not just to be preserved, it has to be operationalized also. So how we do the modernization, but at the same time preserve the heritage. And towards that, we wanted to have the guidelines, etc., the codification of what we must do when we are working on these operational structures, which are not just for tourist kind of importance. They are of operational importance as well. So for that, we developed these codes. And today, with the deliberation, we would like to have the inputs from all the experts and other stakeholders so that we can modify or amend whatever is required. And the target date is by 30th June, then we adopt these codes. We launched the inaugural series of consultation workshop on 19th of April, which was the non-speakers are requested to mute their mics. I think there is some disturbance which is happening. So I just got a lot of feedbacks on the chat box. So 19th April, this was launched. CEO Niti Aayog was the chief guest. Secretary Housing and Urban Affairs, Shri D.S. Mishra was there. Then Chairman Railway Board was there. And it was a very good session attended by about 1,000 delegates. So we had, though, into that thought of two subsequent consultation workshops to be held on a similar format, but because of COVID pandemic, we had to postpone it and make it in the form of these roundtables. So very happy that all of you could spare time and could participate. Vinita ji from Railway Board, she heads the heritage, I would say, vertical in Railway Board. So happy to have her here. So over to my team, Shri R.K. Singh, for the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now introduce Shri Vivek Bhushan Sood, Chief General Manager, Planning and Projects at IRSDC, who is an RSC of 1994 batch and has worked in various positions in track and bridge management for Indian Railways. He is heading the planning and projects vertical at IRSDC and has been associated with planning of 63 stations that IRSDC has taken up, and has also used his skills in bridge engineering towards the execution of complex projects of station redevelopment at Habibganj and Gandhinagar. I would now invite Mr. Sood to present about the station development process adopted by IRSDC. Over to Mr. Vivek Sood.
Thank you very much, sir, for the introduction. And
just 1 minute, Vivek, I think हर बार वो announcement करना पड़ेगा, काफी सारे लोगों के mics अभी भी on है, फिर वो disturbance होता है. So again, I would request everybody to please keep their mics on mute except for the speaker and maybe the convener, Mr. R.K. Singh and myself, those who are to interview. Shikha ji, आपका mic अभी on है. Shikha Jain, please. Yes, please, Vivek.
Thank you, sir. So good afternoon to all the participants in this this focus group discussion. And the heritage codes, the discussion will be held afterwards. And I just want to give you an overview of what we are trying to do at the station. So because this heritage and our approach, that fits into that approach. So just an overview. So quickly, I'll share my screen. And I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the task that we have taken up at IRSDC is the transformation of the railway stations. So we want to, if we look at our vision and mission, so we actually are covering the entire gamut of railway station, trying to see how the railway stations can be can provide this comfortable ambience, this good ambience, good facilities to the passengers, and how we can efficiently using technology and sound financial strategy. So how we can make these stations self-sustainable. So that is what MD sir put in better words, that it is making money out of air and then putting that into the station, so that the stations actually the people get the stations they deserve. So our basic overarching philosophy, the underlying philosophy is that is what Calatrava is saying. So we understand the importance of the railway station to the city, and we want to make this interaction between the city and the railway station, the identification of the railway station with the city and city with the railway station. That is something which is already very strong, and that is what we understand, we want to underline, we want to enhance through the work that we are doing. So a bit about IRSDC. So IRSDC is a joint venture of Rail Land Development Authority, IRCON and RITES. So 50 as a 26-24 joint venture, 9+ years since we came into existence, and we are currently the nodal agency for station development program as approved by the Union Cabinet, and also the main project development agency. We have the powers to approve our plans under Section 11 of the Railway Act, and we have to generally follow the national TOD principles. And consultations, of course, is an essential part of what we do. So it has to be harmonious with the surrounding development. And also, the railways have given us powers at par with zonal railway as far as the station plans are concerned. We are already working as a plan approving body. We have already done plan approvals in Madhya Pradesh, Delhi, Chandigarh, Gujarat, Maharashtra. And for the first time in the history of Indian Railways, we issued an occupation certificate for Gandhinagar project in Gujarat. So that was the first time. So we are working as a single point agencies where we are doing the planning. We are also interacting with all the different agencies and facilitating the PPP projects or working with all the agencies who have to work in this field. Now, why we want to take up the redevelopment? What are we trying to do through the redevelopment program? So this is a framework that has been prepared. So it is the 7 C's. So 7 C's include congestion free. So meaning that the station should be well designed. We should have enough spaces for people getting in, people coming out. These should be convenient. It should be Divyang accessible, lifts, escalators. These amenities should be there. And very important for today's discussion, the conservation. So conservation means the conservation of the heritage, conservation of the built environment. So green building conservation, all of this is covered in this conservation aspect. Cleanliness, of course, is required. So it's a public place. It should be clean. Communication is very, very important. People come from various different modes. They disperse to various different modes. For people come for a variety of purposes, and then there will be a variety of requirements when the people come to a railway station. So the clear and fast communication system is one of the focus areas of our planning. Convergence of modes, so multimodal integration. So this is rightly now being even Prime Minister gave us we should now focus on multimodal integration. For a railway station, it is equally or very, very important, because people are not just passengers, a railway passenger, but they have their further requirements of the further legs of their journey. So we have to have this convergence, multimodal integration going in the complex. And this is one important aspect, basically, which covers the important aspect of that. We want to convert the station into a city center. So the stations are located in the center of the cities, but being a city center means that we can do a variety of uses in the same complex, and the same area which is being used for railway traffic can also be used for offices. It can be used for for some retail. It can be used for hotels. So various kind of uses that the city has. And then it starts working like a destination where people go, not just for transport, but also for a variety of other uses as well. So this is a framework that we are using, and all the plans that we prepare, we check against this framework. What does it mean? So it means that the proper drop-off pickup, so it should be organized outside. Entries and exit, they should be systematic, well thought out. And internally, if we see, then it means that the platform should not be the waiting area. So we can have a separate waiting area, maybe a concourse above the tracks or some other place where people sit comfortably, don't go to the platform till the time train is announced. So this open area, it is difficult to control that environment, difficult to give that amenities at all the platforms. So if we provide the concourse, then it will help in improving the facilities that we provide, and also the ambience or the image of the railway journey as a whole. So some of the strategies that go into accomplishing what we are doing. So this is the Nagpur station, one of the heritage stations that we have got, and this planning that we have done has already got the heritage clearance. And what we have done is, in this case, come up with a new entry block. So this entry block and these all green areas are the spaces where people will be. So there's an entry block this side, entry block this side. So people who have yet to take the train, they are in these areas. This is the concourse. This large part, this is the concourse. So people actually get in from this side or get in from that side, get up to the concourse, wait there till the time the train is announced, and take these paths, either these escalators or lifts or stairs, and then take the train and go. Whereas people who come by the train, they actually take these pink paths or these red. These are the exit building both sides, so that now the movements are smooth, unidirectional, and conflicts are not there. And the effort in this particular case was to clean up the entire area. If we see the prior to this, lots of buildings are there on both sides of the station, just abutting this. And one of the building is actually done later, but having the same style as this building. So which is not really the kind of stone which was used in this building. So we have done in this case a cleanup all around the building, so that now this building is highlighted, as also we are doing the experience of the passengers is better, and this building will be put to reuse for providing other amenities. It will not be used for entry exit because universal accessibility is difficult, and matching the levels of the other facilities is difficult. So it will not be used for as the main entrance, as it is being done now. So entrance will be here, exit will be here, but all other amenities. So people will be using this building for different purposes after the redevelopment also. This is how the concourse should look like. People should be comfortable waiting here, and instead of being on the platform. So all the amenities can be provided here, and these are the gates which from where we can go to the different platforms. Another element is through roof. So this was another heritage station that we are doing. This is Gwalior, and there basically this large volume of space, it actually serves multiple purposes. In this case, of course, the architect provided some jalis and tried to put the architecture right on the in the patterns which will form right through the day at different times of the day, and with artificial lighting and natural lighting. So lots of possibilities open up when the planning is done like this. Of course, in our planning, we have got the real estate and the station. So we want both to exist with each other, coexist peacefully, or in fact, it should be 1 + 1 actually coming up with not 1.5, 1.7. They should not be diminishing each other. These should be helping each other. So maybe 1 + 1 = 11 or something like that. So it should be synergically. The station should help the real estate should help the station, not just financially, not just because real estate is making money, but basically the facilities that we are providing, all these functions should help to add to the passenger experience. So that is the idea basically, that this commercial is not a mindless commercial that, okay, because there is some spot, so let us open a shop there. How that is helping the passenger, and it should in no case diminish the requirement of the passengers to quickly be able to move into the station and come out of the station. So in order to marry the different requirements of all the different kind of of different sensibilities that a station entails and different requirement of real estate. So we are coming up with a comprehensive plan, and this plan is what we, for which the codes are there. So this is our planning process, and we can see that we are not just collecting the data from railways, but also studying the city master plan bylaws and trying to incorporate both of them into our plan options. And we are designing all the elements, whether the areas are adequate or not, whether people will have adequate level of service, and whether going forward when the traffic goes up, whether these areas will suffice or not. And then we are carrying out the consultations, including with the local bodies and also with the railways and other stakeholders. So we are before putting any plan into for tendering. So we are doing all these consultations. So so this is our entire flow chart, and this is actually helping people are able to appreciate what kind of work we are doing and what we are envisioning and how it is actually being translated. So lots of benefits of doing the development that we are seeing. So the congested station area, they are actually transformed from being a rundown station, rundown area which is not in sync with the city. Instead of that, we are getting an integrated development which actually leads to gives a fillip to the local area, which becomes a transit-oriented development node, TOD node. It becomes, and then this actually becomes an icon. It becomes a landmark for the city. It becomes a city center, and people who already love the station, they love it more because it is not just one function but multiple functions that it can now perform. So what we need is safer areas because it is a 24/7 place. So at the evening when the lighting is low, nighttime, so whether we'll be able to ensure the safety for the people who are walking on the streets. So what we need are these concepts of urban planning like eyes on the street, active streets, and then we need these large green areas so that people are actually having this sense of openness, sense of community feeling should be strengthened when we are providing these public buildings or public premises. So and it should be a pleasure walking through or maybe taking a bicycle to this area. So these are the objectives that we have found out. Okay, that these objectives will help the station, and whatever commercial development we do should actually meet this kind of requirements. So that is why we have come up with these codes. And these codes we are having that if we do the conventional kind of development, it is every chance that we will have boundary walls on both the sides and the streets will start looking something like this. But this is not our vision, and our vision is something like this. We want the people to be interacting with the properties to be interacting with the people. So once that happens, so it actually is not we can see that this dull street and this street, both cases we are doing commercial, both cases we have a station nearby, and we can all of us can actually find out that determine that this second development is a lot better than the first development. We want this kind of a development. That is the vision. There are a lot more other elements of this vision, but the idea of making this codes is because of this kind of experience that people should get. So different kinds of codes are there for station planning, transit-oriented development policy, how it is to be implemented. Then there's form. How the form, the station, what sort of a form it should take. Then architectural design codes, and in this architectural design we also have the heritage aspect going, and then a green building aspect. So how the architecture and the heritage, what do we do to the heritage? How we preserve that? How we enhance that? So that is what is covered in this code for railway heritage assets. And we have a lot of heritage. So lots of tangible and intangible heritage is available, not just in terms of old building, but also lots of historical events which have taken place at the stations, lots of events which have become memorable, and cultural heritage, lots of heritage is there in the railway areas. So we hope that these codes will help the Indian Railways efforts to preserve the heritage, and will be able to do, when we do the station development, we'll be able to do our bit to enhance the heritage or preserve it for the posterity's sake. We've already done consultations. So as MD sir was saying, 19th of April, we had the launch with the CEO Niti Aayog, Chairman Railway Board, and Secretary Mahua being present. Then we have done for town planners one focused group attention, in fact, two of them. So both were with the town planner. So 22nd of May and then 29th of May. And then today we are morning we have this session with architecture and green building, and now we are having this session for heritage. So we are looking at different aspects of what different stakeholders, different experts who work on the stations, what they think about the code that we have come, and what specifically needs to be improved upon or elaborated upon, or whatever is good also. So that is what we are discussing through these discussions. Two projects which IRSDC had taken up 4 years ago when I joined IRSDC, both are nearing completion, almost complete. One is Habibganj, which is in Bhopal. It is one of the important stations of Bhopal, and this is the existing railway station. So it is a new railway station, around not more than 30 years old. But good architecture vision was there. So this architectural vision, whatever was there, this has been translated into this new station which is built, and the language, the architects for this building, they have tried to pay a homage to this architecture which was there originally, even though the scale and the scope of development is totally different. And then we have these 4 blocks which we can see in the photo. So these are the commercial development around the station. So the idea is that all these functions, everything should add to change the image of the railway station and change the way a railway station is perceived and used by the people. So we can see this is the actually artist impression or a rendered image, whereas this is the actual image. So this is the existing railway station, new railway station, and here by the side we can see the commercial tower which is under construction. So we can see another image of that. So new station, old station, existing station, and the commercial tower. So this is also finishing going on, and this also we can see substantially ready. Facade, everything else is done, and inside also the things are more glimpses of the project, and inside also the work. This is the render, architect's vision of what should be there, and this is how it is actually looking like. And final finishing touches are being made, and in fact furniture etc. are being installed. So this is ready for inauguration any day now. Maybe 10-15 days work is left, so it can be inaugurated any day now. And 2 subways have been constructed and commissioned long back. So these are functional at the moment. So these are being used by the exiting passengers, and this path, this is for the people who have to take go into the station. So they take this path. This is above the tracks, whereas these subways are below the track, and these are for people who are coming out of the railway station. We can see the difference. This is 4 years difference. So the amount of development which has taken place from this to this. So the scale of development is pretty contrasting actually, and a huge investment is there in this small area. And the ambience of the place and the image, once the commercial also starts working, it will be totally different. This is a unique 318 room 5-star hotel which is above the railway track, a unique project for India. And the tracks are underneath this roof. This is a nice 99-meter span roof which has been provided. This is the entry to the railway station. We have a concourse level where people should wait. There are 2 subways in this case also, and this is the deck level, and above the deck everything is the hotel. And for hotel we have this path which has been created from the back side. So hotel functions independently of the railway station, and railway station, basically this airspace has been used productively in this case. And we can see the view from the other direction, and we can see this is the central vista of Gandhinagar, which is the capital of Gujarat. And we have got this 10,000 capacity Mahatma Mandir Convention Center. And this hotel has been constructed to work in synergy with this convention center. And being on central vista, then this track was there. That is why this hotel was constructed above the railway tracks. And another view, you can see the roof, 99-meter roof, which we have constructed right across all the tracks and all the platforms. So this nice roof is there, which will add to the ambience of the station. And this is the hotel. This hotel is also ready. You can see the inside. So this is the main lobby and dining room. So the furniture and all, everything is ready. And this hotel currently is undergoing testing, and next month the commercial launch is also scheduled next month. So this project is also ready. So this is some of the glimpses of the two projects that we have completed, various aspects of that. So now in the further presentation, we'll see how heritage is being tackled in the planning at our station. So this is the architect's vision of, this is the heritage building at Nagpur, which I was showing earlier, and this is that concourse and all the buildings which have been cleaned up, and this is how the station should look like after the redevelopment. So, but I believe this will be covered in detail in the further presentation. So I'll stop here and hand over back to Director, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Just a minute. Just a minute. Thank you, Mr. Vivek, for nice presentation. Now we have Ms. Somi for the next presentation. I will invite Ms. Somi for the next presentation, please. Ms. Somi is a principal conservation architect at Creative Footprints. Creative Footprints is an interdisciplinary practice who have been preparing these codes. Somi is the founder director of One Station Million Stories, which is in the business of experiential storytelling, and founder trustee of Trust for Regeneration of Indian Settlements. Besides working on heritage conservation, management and interpretation, she is also a visiting faculty at the School of Architecture and Planning, New Delhi, and Jamia Millia University, New Delhi. Over to you, Ms. Romi.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible?
Yes.
So I take this opportunity to give you a small feedback, a brief introduction on how this code has been prepared and how it is going to be operationalized. Now, it takes into account 3 different levels of our planning exercise, which Sood sir has just explained. We have, at the highest level, we have a layout regulating plan, then which takes care of integrating the requirements of heritage with the surrounding context. Then we come down to subplot, which is a subsection of that area level. And then we zoom down to a building level exercise. Now, we have 3 different documents through which we address the requirements of heritage. The first document being the 6A, which comprises the codes and an execution, how to execute the working policy, which is the code. The second document we have is the standard operating procedure, which comprises of all the forms and the framework through which the work will be completed. And the 6C document looks at, or rather provides to all those working on station area design, the basic research which was done to inform what railway heritage comprises and what are its specific requirements and how to approach railway heritage. Now, when we did our first sets of surveys, what we understood is that the principles required for addressing railway heritage and in terms of its continuity is that we must be able to approach it through its continued and value-added compatible use so that no heritage gets left behind. The second principle that we follow is that we need a standardized approach towards conservation, maintenance, upgradation and expansion, and then integration of heritage and community. The third thing that we emphasize on is that there has to be a give and take, an overlap between the real estate value boosting and how heritage also benefits from the process, and that heritage is in a future forward entity. And then comes identifying a compatible and a sustainable contextual development by which we approach and integrate heritage with its surrounding. Then all of this planning system gets operationalized through station-specific information, which is sourced through all the levels of surveys and the stakeholder consultations, which Sood sir had mentioned. Now, when we look at these three documents, the fourth document which supports station level work is document 3B, which looks at our area level planning requirement, which integrates historic buildings with its surroundings through different levels of aesthetic control. Now, we have the Indian Railway Act, within which we have the MOSSR, and under which we also have an Indian Railway Heritage Charter. Our codes synchronize every information taken from these three overarching documents, and this is operationalized through the working policy. Then, to break down or implement the working policy, we have the standard operating protocols, which is document 6B. Then we have a property development card, which is contained in document 3B, and frameworks for operationalizing in 6B, and the handbook, which is 6B. Now, if we carefully look at the different charters, the Indian Railway Heritage Charter and the MOSSR, we've actually synchronized all their clauses and made the entire set of documents operational through these codes. The other key documents which inform preparation of these codes are the UBBL, the Model Heritage Bylaws, the Conservation and Audit of Heritage Buildings by CPWD, Improving Heritage Management in India. A report very recently published by the Niti Aayog became actually it became an important reference point for us to take the message of adaptive and compatible reuse for railway heritage forward. The other laws like the Jaipur's Walled City Heritage Conservation and Protection Regulation, Mumbai's MHCC Committee's regulations, then the DCRs for Greater Bombay, the Ahmedabad's Comprehensive General Development Laws, and others, as pointed out here, are very good, important references for us in drafting these codes and the norms. If you were to peruse through these documents, 6B especially, you see its application across the project spectrum. So from conceptualizing to project management to undertaking assessments to looking at air rights or kind of signage development, all of these processes are factored through the standard operating procedures, and it can be applicable across the spectrum of stations. Now, if we take a step back and we see that what and why do we require such an approach, such an exhaustive approach towards station design? Now, our railway stations have three determinants which make each station entity a unique opportunity. The first is the station and the station area design itself. The second is the manner in which these historic stations have integrated and reacted with the growth of its settlement, which is dealt at the layout planning stage, and then how the city has expanded or even sometimes contracted in lines with the station area and city's growth. So this entire waxing and waning process is actually captured in how or what kind of stations, that is it a junction, is it a port or a halt station, and what kind of gauge, what is the technology that was used, how much it has changed over time, and then the geographic factors also came to play. So in short, when we look at the spectrum of our railway station, we not only see the changes because of the operational elements of a station, but also based on the type of service offer, that is it a goods station or a passenger station, and what kind of geography it operated in. All of these give us a diversity in design language, planning, and every detail of the station and station area. These facts are detailed in document 6C. if we were to look at even one example, and why is it that we need the kind of growth that is the momentum, because station areas always evolved with the time, and it has always expanded, contracted, and changed. I guess Howrah Station is one of those classic examples which shows the not just expansion of a physical form, but also its functional changes. So if from 1854, the design or its expansion did not happen in 1906, and then it again expanded by the time it was the 1990s, all of it, it becomes the carrier for millions of people who depend on such station and station area. The area around the station, so we started doing an assessment of the station and station area to check what kind of studies are required to capture the essence, the values of the station area, and how this city and the station integrated itself historically and how to take it forward. So we looked at from 1854 straight down to 2021, how a station grew and what is the amount of network and connection, and what should be the area of study when we say that a historic environs or a historic precinct of a railway or industrial heritage has to be addressed. So for stations, this entire study is converged in the package 3B in the property development card. Now, looking at the diversity of station architecture itself, we have stations that were dedicated to the ports, which had an international appeal. We have a kind of set of stations which were purely defense-oriented station. We also have station architecture, which shows a higher level of syncretism, especially in junctions and in terminal areas. So it's not that one kind of architectural language or one kind of documentation that can suffice. Every station and its station details and diversity in terms of material, in terms of its use, in terms of its orientation, and in terms of interaction with the surrounding is what we have been able to compute for in the forms. Now, just to give you a palette of diversity, and not just in terms of stations, but also what are the other types of railway heritage assets which we do find in our station area and is going to be included as a part of the planning process. And these span across different times, different types of architectural envelope, different types of even architectural styles, and even in terms of nature and cultural resources. We also have things like the ghats, the railway canals, and in terms of passenger amenities as well, which today not require upgradation. So unless and until we are able to factor this entire spectrum of different types of stations and its contemporary requirements, we will not be able to transcend heritage into the future. These codes actually factor for what is called the sociological and economic as well as visual stimulation, and it actually takes it forward. So some of the major requirements of our station management and in terms of station maintenance is sets of standardized procedures which address issues like some structural issues related to water, issues related to compatible intervention, issues related to infrastructure, as well as providing for advertisement and any other form of notices. So just a general palette of issues which I'm sure most conservation architects will be able to spot. Now, what these codes have done in its 3A, 3B, and 3B, 6A, 6B documents is to be able to convert each of these issues that we find into opportunities, mobilized by resolving each issues in its corresponding stage. So from the lowest value to the poor quality of urban landscape, it leverages them, it retrofits them, and moves towards placemaking, moves towards conserved resources, and in a future forward manner. So one of the issues or one of the ways in which we're trying to move past is that when we grade our station, when we added a value to our station, it shall no longer be based on what was, but rather the grade itself has to evolve over time and reflect a kind of future. What is the potential, so that we can move in that direction. Some of the parameters that regulate area in and around the station are going to be based on distance, based on vision cone, the types of public spaces, color sciences, architectural style in the station, and the community's aspirations. Now, if you were going through document 6B, you would be seeing these details as in what each of these SOPs imply and what it contains. And the codes at this point are archived in the library and in public consultation page. Thank you very much. Sir?
Yes,
Over to
thank
you.
you, Ms. Somi. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Now we can initiate our roundtable discussion with leading professionals in the field of conservation. And to begin with, I would like to introduce Ms. Vinita Srivastav, who is the Executive Director, Railway Heritage, heading the Heritage Directorate of Railway Board in Railway Bhavan, New Delhi, a mechanical engineer with an MBA. Ms. Srivastav is a Chevening Science and Innovation Fellow and has held important positions in the Ministry of Culture for over 2 decades before her posting to Railways. Her projects include the UNESCO protected railway industrial heritage sites like the CSMT building and the mountain railways of Darjeeling, Shimla, and the Nilgiris. I would request Ms. Srivastav to first share her inputs and introduce the other members of the roundtable. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Singh sir. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I have no wish to stand between the stellar panel that we have coming up ahead. And so I'll have a very brief introduction and opening remarks. Vinita Srivastav, Executive Director, Heritage. I'm heading a very small but significant directorate in Railway Board. It is called the Heritage Directorate, and we're supposed to associate with interventions such as this one for policy related to railway heritage. With the detailed technical presentations from Sood and Somi, I have little to say in terms of background other than that what is railway heritage? There's the railway, the way, which is the linear route of the trains. So if we strip it down of all detail, it's the linear route on which trains travel. And then what's a station? It's the station is the node where that way meets a city. And that's the intersection between the railway operational side of it and the urban planner who has to meet at the cusp, which is the railway station. With the brilliant plans going to be rolled out from station development side by the IRSDC, how exactly do form-based codes help? What is the path that they must take? Those are the questions I'll be putting to the panel. And 3 points that I want to underline here. Form-based codes have to ensure historical continuity between the old heritage structures and the new parts of the station that are going to come up. Now, the old part was not necessarily always beautiful, as Somi in her horror pictures has shown, but still it had a bit of history in terms of the people, the journeys, the events, and the nature of the city encountered. Initial 150-year-old railway stations were very, very rudimentary. It all changed when the Victoria Terminus came up to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee. And after that, stations were more magnificent. So depending on the nature of the heritage building, how do these codes ensure that the old and the new talk to each other? The second challenge is how to preserve the intangible memories of all that has transpired. The people that have journeyed through the stations, the important events that have happened there. And third, last but not the least, The colonial construct, the spatial map of the empire with the ports and inland freight and railways as a route to reach the innermost recesses of the country, that was built with keeping the native outside of the picture. It was not important. The Indian was not at the center of this design. But with this new rebuilt reset, I think during the pandemic, railways has underlined its importance to the nation, not just as a transport means, but also as a provider of essential services, the special trains, the Oxygen Express. And how does the Indian citizen come at the forefront and center of it all is perhaps the intellectual input that we need from our panelists now. So without further delay, I will read out the introductions of the panelists and start with the opening remarks, which are between 5 and 7 minutes, after which the panel is open for discussion. The first panelist to introduce, Shri Ravindra Singh, an IAS officer of the UP cadre, 79 batch. Perhaps we can have a spotlight on him. He retired as the Secretary, Ministry of Culture in the Government of India, and apart from his endeavors as an administrator, he has been instrumental in preparing a working report on heritage management by the Niti Aayog. Sir has made this report an important reference point for these codes which are being prepared. He has also been very kind to share his constructive feedback on the codes in advance. The next panelist is Dr. Shikha Jain. She has an extensive portfolio on cultural heritage. It covers conservation, world heritage, and museum planning in India and overseas through Drona, her organization. These include modern and industrial heritage, such as the master plan of the National Rail Museum. She's an international expert. UNESCO offices in Singapore, Malaysia, UAE, Myanmar, and Indonesia. She has advised them and has been a consultant to UNESCO New Delhi as well. Our third panelist is Dr. Ajay Khare, Professor Dr. Ajay Khare of the School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. He is globally trained in architecture, culture heritage studies, and urban regeneration. He's completed doctoral level studies from UK, York, and Leicester, and is a well-known international scholar of heritage studies with many publications and prestigious research and consultancy projects. Earlier, Khare Sahab, a Fulbright scholar in the US, has served as founder director of SPA Bhopal since July 2009 and has more recently, by the appointment committee of the cabinet, been appointed as a member of the National Monuments Authority. Gurmeet Rai, conservation architect heading CRCI since 1996, has undertaken a wide range of projects within the domain of cultural heritage conservation and management practice. The work includes architectural documentation, historic building conservation planning, projects related to cultural heritage tourism management, capacity building and training. Ms. Rai has also prepared the visitor management and site management plans for Lumbini in Nepal and been instrumental in the cultural heritage policy for the state of Punjab. Ms. Aishwarya Tipnis, an architect, educator, and heritage conservationist based in New Delhi, is a recipient of the Civilian Award. Pardon my French there. Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. Is that right? Knight of Arts and Letters. So congratulations for that. She has associated with the railways in the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway project and is a consultant to UNESCO, Asian Development Bank, and World Monument Fund. Last but certainly not the least, Abha Narayan Lambaji, a brilliant architect with a renowned practice, a master's degree in architectural conservation from the SPA New Delhi, years and a list of awards: Sanskriti Award, Eisenhower Fellowship, Attingham Trust, Charles Wallace. She's been nominated by ArcVision as among the top 20 women architects globally. She's a consultant to ICROM, UNITAR, World Monument Fund, Global Heritage Fund, and the ASI, and has served on the committees of both Delhi and Mumbai heritage committees. She has recently done the transformation of Baikula railway station, which has married the modern and the old beautifully. I welcome all of you in this panel, and we'll be posing an opening question, sir, right to the first panelist, Ravindra Singh ji, and then a question each to the rest of the panelists. My first question to Shri Ravindra Singh. Sir, you've been associated with and have headed the Niti Aayog report on heritage management for the entire country, which has a broad scope and nationwide applicability. So your thoughts on the approach and the strategies for railway heritage, Mr. Singh. So you're muted, I believe. Please.
He's trying to unmute. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Thanks. Sorry.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's very good to see a lot of friends.
सर थोड़ा सा कैमरा एडजस्ट कर लें सर, आपका फेस कट रहा है.
Actually, मेरा वो काम नहीं कर रहा, मैंने दूसरा लगाया है. So let's hope this works. So I said thank you very much, and it's good to see so many friends out here today. And I'm sorry I missed your question. Can you repeat it?
Certainly, sir. You've been associated with the Niti Aayog report for heritage management nationwide, and we would be blessed to hear your thoughts on the approach and the applicability towards railway heritage.
So I think the Niti Aayog report, as you are aware, was about built heritage in total. So that was with the main focus on ASI and state monuments and so on. And there was, of course, a lot of praise for railways being one sort of sector of the country's culture, which has focused a lot on this, how to preserve and how to promote culture. And I would like to thank you very much for bringing out this report, which is very comprehensive. And the codes are really path-breaking because CPWD had done some work before, but I mean, I think at this scale, no one has imagined or thought of bringing out such detailing. So the report was, I think, very preliminary, and it just sort of was more of a collation and compilation of what's happening and what are the applicable laws. And I think you have sort of taken the next step, which is how to implement it. And I don't want to say too much other than just two things, that in the draft which you have circulated, it's not clear what railway heritage is, whether you are limiting yourself to World Heritage Sites or whether you're going to bring about a classification of, heritage sites within the railways, so that when it is applied, we should know what exactly is the scale of application. And the second suggestion is that you have to have a great focus on pilgrimage, because a lot of railway sites are idle and useless for most of the year. But then there are these huge pilgrimages, like most obviously the Prayagraj Kumbh and the Hardwar Kumbh and so on and so forth. So what is the kind of development where you need huge empty holding areas? How you're going to handle that? And whether you should have a special subsection on that. And my last point was that there is no, definition of the kind of greenery and foliage which is required, or whether you will bring out any guidelines for preservation of existing greenery or otherwise. So these are the small points I wanted to make. I'm sure all the experts I can see, they're all out here, as you said. You have the top sort of heritage experts of the country here today, so I think we need to hear them more than me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So humble and kind, and yet full of advice for all of us. Certainly clarifying what to do in rail heritage, how to strengthen pilgrimage sites like the Kumbh, how to have huge empty holding areas for it, and how to green areas, very significant and important inputs. We move on to the next panelist, Dr. Shikha Jain. Shikhaji, you have also associated with Niti Aayog for the listing of heritage assets. And these include railway industrial heritage assets all over the country. We'd like to hear your thoughts on how this exercise went about, how comprehensive is it, and your thoughts on how the codes should include and modify with this information. Sorry. Was that clear?
Yeah, thank you, Vinita ji. And thank you for inviting me on this panel. In the beginning, I would like to actually compliment IRSDC and the entire team for producing this excellent, publication of codes and guidelines, which are very relevant today. And in fact, I was referring to them about 2 months back when we were still listing the NITI Aayog report, where we are trying to cover more than 100,000 unprotected structures across India and also protected and under various central ministries. And when we reviewed all the heritage buildings under various ministries at the central level as well as at the state level, I found that the Ministry of Railways and IRSTC was really a role model example looking at these codes. So please accept my compliments on this achievement to begin with. And this is what we are trying to showcase that other ministries should also take on. Once I started looking at the codes, I think they are there is very rigorous research work done, by Somi and her team, and her presentation was very elaborate. So it's the background survey and the details, the code development, it's excellent. It almost covers all points. One point that I wanted to add, because you plan to adopt it by June 30th, but probably one needs to look at, who is the end user of these codes, and some of these need to be more simplified, maybe more graphics needs to be there to explain certain things, because even if they are being used by rail officers, there has to be a certain understanding. So I feel, they are very relevant, but they are very in-depth also, and possibly either a more graphic representation or capacity building, of the officers who are going to use it is something that would be required in long term. Of course, that can be a next level stage 2 thing, but that is one point I thought you may consider. Secondly, I was looking at the heritage grading component, and of course, one looks at, I think, what Somi explained in her presentation was more about the process and value assessment and significance of the site, which is very relevant. And at times, I feel that by grading these buildings, all these values and processes sometimes get frozen into doing certain things in a certain manner. So we should not let that happen. I feel the site itself has certain significance and value, then it has a significance in a larger network of the railway. You said railways means the ways or the lines. So that is one aspect I feel probably it has not even been touched here. We are looking at individual stations, we are looking at their surroundings. We even looked at the master plan, but the network as such, how this link was or this particular network was important. In terms of heritage also, you did mention that there was a colonial mindset to plant this network right till the inroads and certain areas not being taken. But I would say there is another layer of this, which was the national identity, which was how Mahatma Gandhi used this very network created by the British to actually use it for freedom. So I think there are several layers of history there, which maybe individual stations or certain stations, and those stories need to be narrated. And that is one aspect. Of course, it would look into, when you go into values and significance, it would be there. But I just felt that somewhere the network of stations and needs to be addressed also. And of course, adaptive reuse is included. And I think the inventories are very, very comprehensive. So once they are filled in, it's a lot of data that you have. But it would be good if you add the term interpretation, interpretation center, or the stations themselves are like galleries, like museum galleries. So anybody moving around at least gets to know about the history and significance, which of course leads to the awareness both of the officers as well as the visitors, and links the community more. You mentioned about the tangible, intangible stories. So people whose lives are associated with that station since years, citizens of that area. So those kind of things, I think probably, some mention of interpretation in the reuse is important, so that all that data that you've collected also gets transmitted and shown in a better manner. And lastly, I just had one point which I think was possibly included. I did see, points related to fire extinguishers and all, but I did not notice a comprehensive risk management plan along with the conservation plan. Maybe that's something I missed, but I felt this interpretation plan and conservation and risk management are essential parts of a conservation plan, which you may consider, to add somewhere. So that's it from my side. And again, my compliments on achieving this. Thank you.
Thank you, Shekhaji. We accept your compliments gratefully because brickbats are more common. The technical points I'll leave for Somi to include and comment on, but interpretation, yes, of the old and the new areas. Because you've raised so many informative points, I'll leave it to the larger panel discussion and move on to opening remarks from Dr. Khare. Namaskar, sir. The National Monuments Authority, of which you're a member, regulates the use of the region around monuments. Now, if you can relate those experiences and approaches to the region around the railway structures we're talking about, what would be your thoughts and guidance? You'll have to unmute yourself, sir.
One line I would like to add is that I am a railwayman's son, born in a railway hospital in Lucknow, and that railway hospital is now your railway heritage asset. And I want to recall one incident. When I was in class 3, we used to play in those four gardens of Charbagh railway station. And when we were taken to on a school trip to Imambara, the first thing which I told my teacher is that, oh, Imambara looks like Charbagh railway station. So this is how railway iconic structures has remained in the minds of our generation, and that puts that railway stations are the most important, and they leave wonderful impression, as all is discussed in these codes. So I don't need to go into the importance of railway heritage assets. But what is important, as you asked the question about National Monument Authority and why I was a bit skeptical about answering that, is that I would say that National Monument Authority was created with wonderful intentions to regulate the area which they call regulated area, which was declared in 1992 declaration. But probably NMA was created to regularize that. But instead of doing regularization to increase or to enhance the character, it went into over-regulation and overzealous efforts. However, the regulations must be tight, as we have seen that in case of Agra Metro, if we would have agreed with them to have an elevated Agra Metro in front of Agra Fort Railway Station and other historic monuments, probably it would have been disaster. So thankfully, we have asked that Agra Metro, if at all it has to come underground. And thankfully, they have agreed, at least in the regulated areas. The rest of the areas, they are whatever is going on as per the regulations. But then it is wonderfully put in your reports. I would again come back to Charbagh railway station, that their metro station in Lucknow, if they would have gone through this kind of course earlier, probably those Charbagh, which is in our memory and memory of every Lucknow citizen, could have not lost forever. Probably neither it has their station comes just in front of those Charbagh. So this Charbagh railway station is now probably cannot be called Charbagh railway station. It can better called as Lucknow railway or Lucknow Metro railway station, because there is a open area which is unmanaged. Thankfully, railways are doing their best to manage those open spaces. I have few suggestions about the more references to be used. One is that probably in the working process, we have forgotten one International Committee of Conservation of Industrial Heritage, which we call TICI. And of course, Somi knows very well about it. TICI has a charter, TICI has a guideline, and TICI is the main advisor for ICOMOS and UNESCO for industrial heritage. And they have been instrumental in and there are many publications on their website, probably that can be used for our further refinement of codes. One incident happened in 2012, that was Taipei Declaration of Industrial Heritage, which is also there on TICI website. And Taipei Declaration was mainly for Asian heritage, Asian industrial heritage. So this can also be used. And if I would suggest that we should be very clear about that how metro MRTS sites are going to be near our RHAs, railway heritage assets, because mainly what happens, because Lucknow Metro, Agra Metro, they are all after all working for public. So then there is a lot of pressure. But then when at that time these codes help. When you have a code, when you have a law, when you have a legal regulations, etc., it helps. You can resist that oh no, we have to follow code. But then that should be very explicit that if metro has to come near an RHA metro station, what will be that? And that we could do in NMA for Pune Metro, but we and even near Tughlakabad railway station in Delhi, but probably at many places we could not. And Agra Metro is really a case which is a classic case for a study for all of us, those who are conservation architects as well as all those who are making new codes. I would like to end by congratulating the team which has prepared wonderful rules, and 3.1 to 3.1.6 in your code 6A is excellent. And then conservation plan and etc., which are in the SOPs, they are also very, very good. So please include these suggestions which I was telling, and kindly also involve ICOMOS Industrial Heritage National Scientific Committee in India. There is a ICOMOS National Scientific Committee, and that can be used for our further refinement. I found one very interesting thing. Somebody writing the code was very obsessed with Jodhpur railway station, like as I am for Charbagh railway station. Jodhpur railway station is captioned for Thiruvananthapuram, Chandigarh. So please see that if it can be corrected. I have one line to end. I belong to Ministry of Education. Now, Ministry of Education is again the second or third largest landholder in country after railways and army. So your codes, which are prepared meticulously, they would be a great lesson for Ministry of Education. Their colleges, universities, which are in the center of the town, they should become like Columbia University in New York. Why should there be Columbia University is right in the middle of the town? And then the universities where we have studied, like York, Leicester, all these, and we are having so much logged land, and we create School of Planning and Architecture of Bhopal 30 kilometers away from the city center. So why we are having those land? And there is center is lying in the center, they could have done it. So I think these are the lessons for the cantonment also. Some days back, I received a call from Brigadier of Lansdowne campus in Uttarakhand. They want to have some suggestions about their heritage buildings. I told them that please attend today's webinar and make your properties revenue earning, and you will have conservation plans ready. And then there will be architects who can help you. But then if you look for funding, probably nobody can help unless there is revenue. Thank you, Vinita ji, for giving me time for adding my views. And I would say that if there would be question answer session, I would be happy to answer further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I guess that is what comes with the breadth of experience and an academic background. We have so much to work on that our short summary will simply not suffice. Just an assurance that, as Loya says, nodding, we will certainly carefully note and work on these. The expert bases that we haven't tapped, ECOMOS, Sticky. Without losing much time and to save time for panel discussion later on as well, move on to Gurmeet Rai. Sir, thank you, sir. We move on to Gurmeet Rai ji. Ma'am, you're there?
Yeah, just
Gurmeet ji, yeah. Gurmeet ji has worked hands-on with material, you know, stone, brick, lime, textile. She's very much a practitioner and she brings unique sensitivity. I've witnessed her Hriday City presentations for Amritsar. So a lot of passion and feeling and knowledge into her work. What kind of advice do you have, ma'am, for railway practitioners who are not sometimes as sensitive to the heritage on ground?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanita, and thank you so much, Somi, for inviting me to this platform. And sorry, there's a bit of my background's a little busy because I'm on the road. But what I would like to share here, and you're right. I mean, as a practitioner, my questions would come from, my observations would come from that platform. There are three questions here that I would have for Somi, and that is, what is railway heritage? Though I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this. When do you use this code, and who would use these codes? Now, in terms of what, and again, Vanita, I would like to draw attention back to Amritsar. The thing is that when I look at the railway station of Amritsar, there are some most amazing structures at Ensemble. It's not just the station itself, and we're all aware of it. It would be a lot of other structures as well. So you've got these water tanks, you've got these go downs, and so on. But as these buildings become, the way change is happening, and then you don't need some of these buildings, or new kind of facilities are envisioned, these buildings tend to be either neglected or removed. So there are bridges as well, crossing over canals and so on. And there are lots of, so to be able to say, look, railway heritage is not just what we are using today, but also in some.
Ma'am, we've lost your voice.
The last we heard was old buildings, and
I'm going to put my camera down. Maybe that way it'll improve my bandwidth here.
We can hear you fine now, ma'am.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that it's very kind of critical that the ensemble is recognized. And I'm not saying all buildings need to be retained, but it's kind of important to understand what we want to retain and why. One is that. The other aspect that I would like to draw attention on is that when do you bring this document in? Yeah. And no, so before when, I would say who. Now, the fact that railway stations are such important nodes of a city. Now, you're right when you mentioned that they were designed for not the Indian user. So when I think of Amritsar, Amritsar platform number 1 faces towards the civil lines. And the way the railway line was created, similarly in the case of Purani Delhi, that to the north of the city is the New Delhi, the civil lines, and to the south was where the natives lived. Now, platform number 1 responds to the new city. I mean, I'm talking about the colonial part of the city. Till today, and platform number 6 actually leads to the old city. Now, till today, platform number 1 is where all the Shatabdis come and all the passenger train comes, bringing pilgrims to Amritsar. But to be able to go to the Golden Temple, you do a huge loop and you congest one particular bridge that connects the civil lines to the old city. So it's kind of commonsensical that platform number 6 should be used for the pilgrims. Now, how are we going to do that? Which means the city is going to orient itself in that particular direction. There's a large open space there, which means that the railways need to be in dialogue with the local government because it impacts local planning. So now, when do you do it?
Now, this particular dialogue with the local government becomes a very critical part when you start doing this planning, because I do remember that railways, with all their good intentions, put out a upgradation plan for the Amritsar railway station, but some of these aspects were missing. The third aspect that I would like to flag is, today we are looking to, gone are the days where we needed to look at heritage separate from the development paradigm. So here I would say, okay, when you look at these documents of your codes, I would like to first examine that how do the railway engineers, I'm assuming engineers are the ones who begin the scoping of, upgradation of a railway station. Now, how do they scope it? How do they examine, assess a current railway station and plan its upgradation? Now, even if your railway stations are listed, at what stage would they consider that, look, is this a historic one or a contemporary new station? And when do those lights come on, that you need to consider additional aspects, because this building or this ensemble has an additional value which is of historic significance. So therefore, I would like to see the heritage codes to also lay out the roadmap that when do they kick in? And the fact that they become part of the mainstream planning process and not a separate thing for some other consultants to come and have a look and then run behind the mainstream guys and look, we have something special to say here. Because Amritsar station is very important. When I started working in Amritsar 20 years ago, it looked like a very modest building of the colonial period, but industrial, simple, no ornamentation, because Lahore was a more important station. But during 5 years, 7 years, maybe in the early 2000s, the station morphed itself with foliated arches, with domes, with, gold and all of that, which was unnecessary. So, somebody meant well. They recognized the significance of Amritsar as a city of the Golden Temple, but come and placed it and, put that layer onto the station of a very modest industrial building and put it onto that. So I would flag that here, that integrate your heritage code, the process. Engineers should be able to figure out that, look, this is the point where we have to consider this fabric as part of the mainstream planning process. Whether it's your transit-oriented development or whether it is fabric protection and conservation, it needs to, or whether it is responding to, like in the case of Fatehgarh Sahib, or where it's a very important pilgrimage place. What you're missing there is when you get off the train, you want to look, okay, now I'm going to get on a rickshaw. Where should I go? So then you need your interpretation plan, which tells you, okay, where you can go. You need your, that particular, which has already been flagged earlier. So, I would, the what and the when and the who is what I think needs to be deliberated a little bit more, to be able to say, okay, that this time when the codes are being prepared, it's for mainstream use. It's not going to be making beautiful railway stations. It's going to actually fix the way the stations are supposed to function in our cities of today. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us, ma'am, for sparing time. And of course, the thoughts and passions for Amritsar, as well as how to integrate heritage with the network, come through. Somi, I suggest that we make a point-wise list of the questions ma'am has posed and try and answer them off this discussion. Aishwarya has just shared that she has a short presentation on the manuals for DHR. While we set that up, Aishwarya, I'll just give the moderators a bit of time, and if you permit, move on to Abhaji. Abhaji, can you hear me? We don't have your video. Abha Narayan Lambaji. Okay. Do we have a voice with her?
No, I think she's facing some connectivity issues. I don't know
I
if she's able to hear you or not. I'll just message and check what are the issues.
You just give this a minute. Or if you have sharing rights, meanwhile, I suppose we can get that going. I'll wait for you, whichever.
Anil sir, if you can coordinate that, Aishwarya Tipnis would require sharing rights.
Great. So we can connect with Abaji in the meanwhile and have this. We can see your screen.
Can you see? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Thank you so much for inviting me into this discussion. And I really, my heart, in my heart, I feel that these codes were there 5 years ago when we started working on the DHR, because we literally had to do all of this from scratch. And I would like to take this opportunity to share the lessons that we learned during this process. So all those of you who don't know, the Darjeeling Himalayan Railways is part of the Mountain Railways of India World Heritage Site, the first Asian World Heritage Site to be inscribed in 1999. And from 2016 to 2019 was a comprehensive conservation management plan project that was initiated by the Northeast Frontier Railway through UNESCO Delhi. And I had the privilege of being an expert on heritage conservation on a multidisciplinary team that had people from the railway perspective, people from the World Heritage perspective, as well as urban planners on the team. So our task was a little different from everyone else, because this was the first World Heritage Site that didn't have a sort of map to define its extent. So our job really was to start with the definition of railway heritage for DHR, something that we've been discussing this afternoon about what is railway heritage. That was the first question we had tackled. The second was identification of attributes of outstanding universal value, an inventory of the heritage assets, not just architectural, but also civil engineering, and the machinery was taken care of. And then we had an extensive documentation and mapping exercise, including GIS mapping. And most importantly, I would like to talk about the manuals for owners and managers of built heritage that we made through the process. And that's also something that Gurmeet touched upon right now. So we developed a methodology that was multidisciplinary. And I think the one thing that was really, that worked was a bottom.
So sorry to interrupt, but your slide isn't visible. Only a file list is visible. You might have to open the presentation.
Okay, let me try again.
Probably just stop sharing and reshare and it should work.
Is it working now?
We can still see this PC downloads and a file list. You should probably open the concerned file and then reshare.
Second. I will try it again.
Entire screen, that will be better.
Is this working?
Yeah, that's fine. Methodology, identification of value, scope of work.
So, yeah, is this moving now?
Yeah, we are on methodology right now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm so sorry about that. I didn't realize that it had happened. But I think that one of the most important things that we learned as part of the process was the bottoms-up approach of involving the stakeholders from the very beginning. So when we defined the railway heritage, I think this was a very important aspect, because most people associated the DHR as just being the train and the locomotive. So to think about the DHR as being tangible and having an intangible component, not just of the memories and the experience of the journey, but also the technical skills for the repair of the steam engine, was a critical component which came to light through the research. And even looking at the tangible heritage of the DHR, of course, there was the railway aspect, which was the rolling stock, as well as the artifacts that went in running the railway. But it was also the architecture, buildings, and the civil engineering, whether it was the bridges or the tunnels and the culverts that were put into place to make the railway happen. So the main thing that came out of putting understanding of what railway heritage is, the one thing that came to front was that heritage didn't just lie in the buildings or the setting, but it was about running the railway. So all that was required to run the railway was part of the relationship of what we call the railway ecosystem. And that was really critical in the way the strategies were eventually developed for conserving this particular site. So it was here that we realized that the things like the post office, the loco shed that actually housed these steam engines, as well as the hospital and the railway housing were an integral part of how the railway landscape was defined or included in the heritage site. And since we didn't have a map to begin with, the entire mapping exercise was literally had to start from walking up and down the line, looking at where the heritage assets lay, and we were able to adopt a character defining approach to look at 6 different zones within the 88 kilometers of the railway to identify where the heritage assets lay. And like I said, from the very beginning, we adopted a very bottom-up approach with the railway staff, starting from the lowest rung of the officers, including the IOW, going up all the way to the GM. And in this project, I have at least met 4 IOWs and 6 AENs as we went along the 3 years. And that actually gave us a very important clue that it's the railway. People change. It is a system where people continuously change. And that was a challenge, that how do you capacity build when the system itself changes people all the time? So through a lot of high-level meetings, as well as from the top to the bottom, we realized that the one thing and the one way the system would actually work is if we were to leave something behind, which was static. And so came the manuals, because the railway works on the manuals, that there is a standard operating procedure, and that's how it doesn't matter who's running the railway, but the way to run it. And so it was decided that everything, the entire research that was done as part of the project, whether it was the track manual, the loco manual, or the manuals related to architectural heritage, would be put out in simple, easy to understand ways for railway officers to use this in their everyday life. So just looking at the 3 components of architectural heritage manual that we worked on, the first part was simplifying what conservation meant. It simplified the process of how conservation would happen in a day-to-day environment. The second part looked at how design would, so everything that they took decisions on every day, how to put the signage, how to put the lighting, how to add extensions, how to add a toilet block. And the third part was the restoration manual, looking at different parts, the building parts, and how to restore them. So we made these really graphic and very user-friendly manuals. Again, it was almost a 2-year-long job to help them understand what the architecture meant in the simplest fashion. So if someone's talking about a cable, it would help the railway officials to understand what a cable is, what kind of cables existed on the DHR. And similarly, about how do they do their lighting, how do they, because our analysis of the ground showed us that where were they going wrong. Things like when they would only call an external consultant, it was a big thing. But they didn't think installing a dish antenna or installing a CCTV was a big problem. But it actually ended up hindering a lot of the architectural heritage, or cutting off some brackets or something which were of value. So again, we worked with a system where they would be able to break down the heritage and understand and use these as codes. So if just for an example, if they had to replace the roof of Siliguri station, the code would tell you it's 3A, and then you know what's the problem, how do you solve it, and how do you move ahead. Again, we had a lot of capacity building workshops with the people on the ground, helping them operationalize the manual and helping them fill out the templates and helping them understand how the template moves into a BOQ. And overall, I think the one lesson we would like to take is conservation is inherently within the system. It is not something new that has to be invented, but it is to understand how it fits in with the way the railway works. So we worked a lot on the process, on how we could integrate it into their everyday issues. And all of this is detailed in the manuals. I'm sure that the Heritage Directorate would be the best place to get them. But I think what I'm trying to say here is that even for these codes to get operationalized, the main issues that we found was how does conservation get integrated within the existing system and processes of the railways, which are which work on a clockwork? Number two, that capacity building and needs of the trained staff within the CCMP on the ground is a huge challenge, and less dependency on external experts on day-to-day decision making is crucial for heritage management to be sustainable. And third thing is, what do you do with all the data that's collected, all the documentation, all the inventories? How do you put it into an integrated system through a GIS or a BIM operation to make sure that this data can be used for running the railway and using the buildings in a better manner? So, in a nutshell, my observations on the code are that it's a great start, and I really wish that they were there 5 years before. But from our experience at the DHR, I would like to say that I think it is time to see how it fits into the existing railway system and how can it be operationalized by the IOW on the ground, because at the moment, the codes and everything requires an external consultant who's trained in conservation. So either we are asking the railways to hire a conservation consultant on a full-time basis, or we need to simplify things a bit. That's my quick comments that I wanted to share before we move on.
Okay, thank you so much, Aishwarya. That's indeed very comprehensive, and Darjeeling is perhaps the deeply mapped area now because of the work that's been done. Somi, do we have the last panelist? No? Apologies for that connectivity link. But yes, we do have the benefit of the rest of the panelists who are with us now. So I'll go to the senior officials of IRSDC, CMD sir, Sood, others. Is there any question you would like to pose, sir, to the panelists?
I would just respond to one of the comments which was made by Ms. Gurmeet Rai. In fact, that is a case with most of the cities. One side of the city is well connected by the station. So we normally have many works of second entry plan. So it is only one entry of the railway station, and this second entry is subsequently getting planned and developed in many of the cities. And wherever the second entry has been planned, so again, the difference between first entry and second entry remains. So as part of our station development, the first and foremost thing which we are doing is we are removing the concept of any platform as VIP platform. So all platforms will become VIP platforms. The access to the station is through a concourse. So we are doing arrival departure segregation. And once you are at the concourse, just like at airport, you are waiting for your, in case of airport, you are waiting for your plane. Here you are waiting for your train, sitting comfortably, enjoying the ambience, and you can see the trains coming, going, and you can also have retail, entertainment, etc. And the atmosphere there, or the internal air quality and the temperature would be 10 degrees lower than the ambient temperature. So you are much more comfortable. Rather than waiting at the platforms, you wait there. And when your train is about to come, you then go to the platform. And both sides of the city, they will become equally important. So we are developing the second entry also equally well. So it will be having same level of access on both sides. So that is what we are doing even at Amritsar. In fact, at Amritsar, we have certain issues of land. Railway gave its land to BSNL, and there is some more land which has been given. So we are just trying to regain that land. In that case, our second entry can become more grand. Otherwise, presently it will be there, but it cannot be made that grand because of that location. In fact, Adarsha has a short presentation. So I would request if Adarsha can make a short presentation on how exactly we are integrating all these aspects which are mentioned. Adarsha, can you quickly make that presentation?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Anil sir, I'll need the rights to share my screen. So in the morning session, we breached time limits, which is why we thought we'll just cut short some of the presentation. But yes, all of you have raised some very valid points. So I'll very quickly show that. Anil sir, I'll need the sharing rights.
You have the sharing rights?
No. able to share. Shomi, can you share the presentation and the initial parts?
Meanwhile, on the chat, if participants can post questions, we'll try and take as many as possible.
So you can go, yeah. I'll very quickly explain the overall process in which IRSDC has tried to integrate response to heritage in the planning exercise. So Shomi started explaining on the layout regulating plans. IRSDC has introduced an intermediary in architectural design and between the architectural design and layout regulating plan. These are called property development cards. And these property development cards essentially give more details in terms of the specific norms for each subplot. These subplots are designated for commercial development. Next. There is a detailed process of data capture, assessment, leading towards creating strategies. It is at this stage where IRSDC collects a lot of information with regards to all aspects of station and surrounding area, be it topography, ecology, environment, landscape, access and movement, social inclusion. A lot of data capture and assessment happens at this stage. Next. IRSDC has developed a detailed layout planning process, and the code book 02 lays out this process in more detail, though the priority is on transit-oriented development. But it is at this stage where the consultant, which is appointed by IRSDC or any other agency appointed by IRSDC, is supposed to look into all aspects of integrating railway land with surrounding area, responding to the context, whether it's environmental or railway, natural or built heritage. All kinds of responses are integrated. This is a simplified diagram. So, but the process behind this is more robust. Can you go to the next one? So there are, just go back. So the first three stages is where data capture and assessments get integrated with the planning process. And when you look at the station design and eventually identifying use and details on the subplots, that's where the proposal stages of conservation get integrated. Next. Then there is a process of detailing out the layout regulating plans, which is then approved by IRSDC. This becomes the framework of planning and all kinds of responses, whether it's response to transportation, infrastructure, because holding capacity assessments are typically done for stations and surrounding areas to even establish how much of trips and land use can be incorporated within the railway land, and what are the contextual requirements that has to be responded to. All those are then formalized. In fact, there are a couple of stations where these kind of approvals have already been started. Next. All of this starts leading towards an overall urban design vision, which is about how IRSDC, railways, all stakeholders perceive this land to be. And this urban design vision is then detailed in the form of the heritage, the property development cards. Can you go to the next one? The property development cards simplify the process of regulating the development of subplots. The idea over here is to lay more emphasis on the quality and design of the development rather than looking into regulatory requirements. Most regulatory structure requirements are addressed at the layout plan stage. Only the minimal ones which are necessary come over here. The property development cards are then split into 4 kinds of requirements. Now, for each subplot, property development cards are to be prepared separately, and the responses within the property development card, form-based responses, have to be then chosen very carefully by the technical consultant at IRSDC. Can you go to the next one? So there are 4 kinds of property development cards. I'll not discuss the first 3. The first one is buildable volume card, which essentially looks into the overall development volume at the subplot. The second one is street regulation card, where the regulations related to street and junction designs come into place. Third one is open space regulation card, where open space responses come into place. And like I said, these are all options available to the technical consultant, and he chooses the correct parameter based on the requirements. Till now, the stations that IRSDC is working upon, we've seen that 5 or 6 parameters are becoming like the mandatory ones. And then the others are more optional and get adopted as per requirement. The fourth one is the heritage regulation card. Can you go to the next one? So the heritage regulation card now gives more details as to what is the kind of response that a commercial development has to cater to when it is next to any kind of railway station, which is categorized as historic or heritage. Next. Some of the parameters that have been identified yet till now are view corridors, view cones, and there are more details of this provided in code 3A and 3B. View cones, architectural response zones, construction control zones. These are then split into various category of control zones. So there could be through corridors, short halt spaces, assembly spaces, and these are defined zones next to the heritage areas. Next. Which are the height control zones and how much of it is to be controlled? Next. Some of the other parameters, integrity, structural safety, facade proportions. Next. Other unifying features, mass and void correlation, symbolism. Again, like I said, these have to be carefully used and applied by the technical consultant who prepares these heritage regulation cards. Next. Functionality, material palette, color palette. Next. Yeah, so that is it. Some of the stations we are testing these norms. I completely appreciate that this requires some amount of data capture assessments. And yes, it cannot be done by any normal person, which is why IRSDC has ensured that most of the stations where heritage is being considered also has a conservation architect, either directly, indirectly, or in whichever ways. So they are trying to integrate that. But yes, these are steps for the beginning. And we would like to have more views on this and inputs on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Adarsh. Can I quickly now request Somi, because a lot of good suggestions have come from the panelists. So to what extent we are incorporating that, or any other comments that you would have, and then we can again throw open the floor for question answer session.
So what I do understand from the entire panel is, one, if I'll come to the comments by Ms. Tipnis at the end. I hope that's okay. Where the risk assessment is concerned, which Dr. Jain mentioned, we have it included along with the heritage impact assessment, and we used risk assessment as a tool to also meter the impact, so that the positive and negative impact both get documented. But I understand that I guess I need to split it so that they look like two different components. I think that's one. Dr. Khare, you're absolutely right. We need to look at TICI's charter. I haven't, as of yet, we haven't absorbed it completely. We will look at the Type A declaration and the TICI guidelines this point forward. We did look at the other documents from ICOMOS, but not the TICI's charter. We will do that. The third thing I think is where it looks at defining railway heritage, we are going by the definition of the railways of the railways charter itself, because it is quite an inclusive and a broad definition. It gives us a set, or it actually includes from intangible, tangible. I don't think the word natural heritage is explicitly mentioned, but we shall mention it in our document. We can always improve on the definition. Where the query on who can use it or when to use it. So we, this for everyone, that we actually have that mentioned in the first section of the working policy, but I think we can articulate it better. Now coming to the interesting thing which Ms. Tipnis mentioned. Yes, we need to make manuals which are specific to stations. The intent is that once these SOPs are used, it will make these site-specific output. But this is prepared so that the consultancy for, I think, almost 400 stations it will be handling. So a larger number, how to manage that entire set of work. But the output will be in the form that you are showing, and it is actually a very comprehensive format. It boils down to that output. Is there any other queries? Is there any other queries that I'm missing out? I think we've answered most of them.
I
Ma'am?
think the suggestion of more graphical representation, so that's a good suggestion that we can
Yes, sir.
incorporate.
Yes, sir.
There was another comment that there are layers of stories around the station. So I would like to mention when I and Somi, we were started working on stations. So we thought of this as one station, million stories, OSMS. So we wanted to work on it in a, I would say, very enthusiastic manner right from the beginning when we were thinking of 400 stations, 600 stations to be developed in a single year. But then since there are issues of making money from air, so that took some time. But that OSMS is still on. And we will definitely have this thing implemented at all our stations, the redeveloped stations. So where this story of not only the railway station, but also of the city, because this should become a place, a destination where people would like to come and dwell for more time rather than just catching the train. So catching the train will be one of the many functions which it will serve. So Somi can talk about OSMS.
Starting OSMS quite literally spanned out from trying to connect different stations, station stories, and everything that the station is about. And yes, the station design started with a European story fancy, but it also had Indian aspirations with the change in guarantee system. So this entire complicated and almost like a story, a blockbuster film can be rolled out to show through interpretation at station areas using mixed media, so that 24 hours people would want to come to the station, use the train, and never leave the station and the train. So I hope so. We'll implement it, because this right now sounds a little intangible. We'll make it tangible.
Absolutely. Everything in this universe is created twice. The idea is first created in your head and then it is physically implemented. So its physical implementation time has come now.
Yes, sir. This one thing that I would like to mention regarding the station area planning and the architecture part of it. It had colonial aspirations, then it became a defended aspiration, and then it also took in Indian aspirations. So there were these different layers of changes that happened in the architecture and the area around and the commercial development right outside the station area. This entire span of changes and the technological changes have been factored while we write down our SOPs for documentation. So it's not just about colonial aspiration, it's about tracking all the aspirations. So ma'am, if that answers, Vinita ma'am, if that answers one thing that we've actually found in our research. And surprisingly, this entire spectrum, we only look at the colonial layer, but this time we'll be more mindful of the Indian aspirations as well.
Thank you. And this gives me the right point to join voice as a Lucknowi with Professor Khare, that the Char Bagh should return to Char Bagh. I hope everyone who's responsible is listening. We have a question which anybody, is it okay to move on to the questions for the panel now? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So a question by Niharika, who's a participant. Do we foresee that the aim of making railway stations as world-class rail estate, like airports, might in certain cases be in conflict with heritage conservation of railway? So that is about making stations world-class, but then missing out on the heritage conservation. Can I pose this question to Dr. Khare, who's visible here? And
I would say that one single line answer is following the code which are prepared by IRSDC. We can definitely save this, handle this problem. There would be no conflict. If we follow in the codes which are being prepared and will be defined, there will be no conflict of conservation of railway heritage, and that is the main purpose of these codes. And if they are followed in letter and spirit by stakeholders, there will be no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another question by Nishant Upadhyay. He says to advise at the natural culture links developed by ICOMOS and IUCN will be great, as several railway heritage boundaries also include natural heritage and water bodies. Can I request Dr. Shikha to?
Yeah, I completely. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
So I completely agree with what Nishant has said. I mean, the nature culture is an important link, and as we see in mountain railways, you know, when while developing the CMP, how important it is to have the views and the landscape as part of it. I mean, what we saw today were largely stations in urban areas, but if we look at the small stations in the Kalka Shimla along the a railway line, you realize, you know, they have a completely different character, and you can't imagine them without its natural setting. So I think it's a very important factor. And Mr. Ravinder Singh also mentioned inclusion of nature, and with every railway line, that is an important component. The views is what, I mean, as children also we remember going on railway in a train and actually looking at the views. So definitely an important point that we should include. Thank you.
You are on mute.
We have Raveen Singh ji with us. There's a question which suitable for him to answer. Okay, so I'll read out the question and anybody on the panel can take it. From Sandeep Pathe. How can railway infrastructure be included in the heritage list, especially things like quarters, schools, clubhouse, and churches of the British era? Okay. Somi or Mr. Kapoor, if anybody wants to.
I think I'll take that question.
Sure.
Here, the priority, I think, let's understand the priorities here. We are in a position where we have to choose a balance between movement, future of passenger comfort and safety, and the heritage. While all of these are important at every station, I think we'll have to take these decisions very consciously. What is more important, whether to plan for movement, whether to plan for redevelopment, conservation. So there is no right answer to how can the railway infrastructure be listed. As long as we move ahead with these priorities, in some areas, yes, some of the quarters, some of the schools can be listed as heritage, but some areas where the station area is already very congested, even to meet the risk mitigation measures or evacuation measures, some space might have to be created. So like I said, we don't have a ready answer right now. For each station, these kind of assessments would have to be done, conscious decisions would have to be taken, and the priority definitely would have to be given to safety of passengers, people, and the assets.
I would like to just make one point here, if ma'am would permit. This is Rumi from IRSDC, JGM IRSDC. Actually, we are very much conscious of heritage and conservation of heritage, because we are not looking at it from the point of view of just conservation. You know, in heritage, we are all proud of our heritage. Even when we were children, our parents used to take us to heritage places and tell us stories, and everybody learns about it, loves learning about it. So it's not only a heritage in terms of heritage, it is also a commercial entity. Actually, it is a asset as well. So there is absolutely, I think, no question of compromising heritage or not taking care of it, because it is actually one of the assets of every railway station precinct. So I don't think out of the 60 stations that are being done right now, there is not a single station where heritage has not been respected. And as Adarsh has given the presentation, and I think Gurmeet Rai ma'am also made that point, and I wanted to just respond to ma'am's point that that is the nice thing about the planning process that Sood sir and others have shown, that heritage is not separate for us. It is part of the urban design, urban planning process. It is one of the factors. Just like while planning, we are looking at the water systems, we are looking at the movement systems, we are looking at the building conditions surveys. Heritage is one of the aspects which is extremely important, and it is respected not only in terms of the building itself, but also, as Shomi said, the functioning of the building. We don't want our heritage structures to become like there is this general thing कि पुराना building है उसको उठा के museum बना दो. We, as Shomi has said, we do not believe in making mothballs out of our heritage. We want it to continue, and railway heritage, as we know and ma'am has said, it is the only form of extremely alive, living heritage. The stations are 100 years old, 200 years old, but they're functioning. And we don't want to take that aspect away from these buildings. So I definitely want to reiterate that there is absolutely no fear of that any heritage will be damaged. It's all actually on the contrary. Most of the heritage buildings we are enhancing, we are investing money in renovating them, and we are using them as working, living entities as part of the master plan. So I just
Do we have time for one last question, Somi?
No, we have time. We have time. So.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. There's a question by Sunil Kand. It's a two-part one. The first is more of a comment. Rail Enthusiast Society or model makers, how do outside people contribute? So I suppose the consultation process is still on. We can talk about that. The second part of that question is, would you look at restoration of something that has been damaged by nature or human intervention? So if the existing heritage is damaged, how would you look at it?
Ma'am, like I said earlier also, we don't have a ready answer to this. These decisions are taken on case-to-case basis, and what IRSDC has tried to do is create a framework within which these assessments could be done. So IRSDC doesn't want to take a straitjacket approach that these 5 or 6 stations, the heritage has to be preserved, and these remaining 50 we will not touch, or we'll just let go of heritage. IRSDC is insisting that for every station, whatever is heritage, you identify, you establish the values, create all the processes, all the assessments, and based on that, give an informed decision or informed recommendation. So there is no correct answer for this right now. Maybe when we come to certain station designs, then probably we can show the designs and explain how is it being responded or how natural processes are being taken care of.
This is just the codes are to prevent the deterioration, this point forward, and to reclaim and to continue. So that should explain and to be able to do it along with the entire development framework. So it's not leaving anything behind.
And I'd like to invite, thank you, Somi. I'd like to invite Aishwarya ji to quickly comment on the deteriorated heritage in Sonada and Gayabari, which were burned down, and how they were restored again with the help of photographs, etc. So
I think there are 2 points here. Like THR, of course, is a World Heritage Site, and I think it was mandated that as part of the commitment of the railways that they will restore the site back to what it was when it was inscribed in 1999. So 2 unfortunate incidents in 2016 when 2 of the stations were burned down insurgency required them to be restored back and rebuilt because of what had happened. But I think overall, the point what Swami makes is that this is from here on. And I think there is something that we need to think about in the future is what happens after the consultant leaves, because that's where the ball drops. When IRSDC completes all the 400 stations and the site is handed over back to the zonal railway, what happens thereon? I think that's something that, that continuity, because that is where the maintenance, the capacity building of the railways, etc., comes into play. And so there might be a bridge that needs to be, put into the policy about what's going to happen after you exit. Because from our experience, the main job of the railway is to run the train, and that is always going to be priority. And for them to recruit a conservation architect in every division is not feasible. I mean, that's what 3 years of consultation has come about. They can hire an expert who can be brought in from time to time, but every day is when the damage happens. And so maybe there is a point when you look at the policy today, you need to see how it's going to be maintained in the future after the consultant exits. And that's why I also put in the point saying that when all the data is going to be collected for 400 stations, GIS mapping, AutoCAD drawings, photographs, can we have a system or some kind of an integrated system that puts all that data together so that it can be managed when it is handed over to the zonal railways in the future or a PPP partner to monitor this? Because we often end up collecting a lot of data, but how does that data help in the day-to-day management is what we need to see. That's how you will mitigate what happens to it in the future. That's how you will see that it doesn't get damaged once it's moved on to the custodians of the site.
I would just like to mention here what Professor Khare also mentioned. Something which is sustainable that continues. So if the heritage is leveraged as a revenue generating point, so then its preservation is self-perpetuating. And if it is only an expenditure point, then slowly and slowly other priorities they start taking over, because unless until some funds are provided specifically for that, as you said, hiring conservation architect and then carrying out all the works. And again, if it is not being used, there are no footfalls, people are not appreciating. So all those kind of things should not happen to our stations, which we are going to do redevelopment. So that is something which we are trying, as was mentioned in One Station Million Stories, how the redeveloped station, whatever is the heritage component, how exactly it is put to use, where we attract the footfalls, we attract the stories, we can commercially exploit it while retaining the heritage. For example, at Gwalior, the AN office is a very good heritage building, but it is in ramshackle position presently. And there are various adaptive uses which can be there while maintaining the same heritage. For example, Paromita, what is the name of that? Which hostel? Zora? Kya naam bataya tha?
Hostel.
Jostel, huh? So that Jostel concept we presented to Honorable MP, and he very much liked the idea. Yes, the heritage would be something where people will come to live, eat, dine, etc. So it becomes a revenue earning point. So it will become a living heritage, revenue earning heritage. So rather than anybody looking at whether it will be maintained or not, it will be in your interest to maintain. So that is what we are trying to do while doing all this redevelopment also.
Wonderful. And is Gurmeet Rai ma'am here with us?
We can
yes, Vinita. Yeah.
So, ma'am, we'll, with your permission, we'll take a closing remark, perhaps, from you about the revenue earning potential. What are your experiences from the Punjab government sites? Is it possible to generate revenue from heritage?
You know, I think this is something which we haven't unfortunately made use of
is to look at heritage as a revenue generating asset, especially the ones which are part of ministries outside the Ministry of Culture. So I mean, again, my references would be when I look at Amritsar or the other stations I've seen in Sultanpur Lodi and so on. Something revenue, and these sites have such immense, large numbers of people visiting that we just need to know how to harness that, you know.
Okay, great. So we lost you for a moment there. I'm not sure if the comment is complete.
I think, yes, we could connect. There was just a brief moment of disconnect.
Yeah.
So we can request one final comment from all the panelists because I think the number of questions now are, all of them have been answered. So we can request one final comments from all the panelists before coming to the close.
Somi, can you handle that segment, the final comments, and we'll close?
I think we've come this far, and there's a lot of these constructive comments to take it forward. And thank you, Aishwarya. You actually pointed out something very important, that this point forward, all right, but when you're when you're handing it over, then what happens? We'll take that into mind. I understand what you're saying. And could I please pass the mic on now to Mr. R.K. Singh, sir, and he will do the rest of the session.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Romi. So nice of you, and thank you all the panelists for nice talk and suggestions and comments. We'll certainly look into all those suggestions. It has been a useful and very enriching session for all of us. Conserving railway heritage is an important aspect of station development works, which not only just ensures good quality design, but also emphasizes on adopting sustainable practices and its future forward. I would like to request all the participants that we welcome feedback even after this session. So please see the codes on our website and email your comments at fbcodes@rsdc.in. Now, for vote of thanks, I will request Mr. P.S. Utrwa, Senior Architect, Senior Expert with RSDC, for vote of thanks. Thank you, Mr. Utrwa.
Thank you very much, R.K. Singh sir. And today, I really feel privileged, and thanks is a word, a little word, and actually, in fact, we are very grateful to the all panelists for their sharing rich experience. And we were foraying into this unknown area for the first time. And your experience and comments have enriched us, and specifically how to use heritage areas for adaptive uses. So on behalf of IRSDC, I would like to thank everyone for taking out time and joining today's sessions. I thank Dr. Ravindra Singh, Dr. Ajay Khare, Ms. Gurmeet Rai, Dr. Shikha Jain, Ms. Abha Lamba, and Ms. Aishwarya Tipnis. And your comments and your specific suggestions will be with us. And most importantly, last but not least, I would like to thank Ms. Vinita Srivastava, EV Heritage from Railways. And ma'am, your sentence, intangible memories of passengers passing through the stations remain always with them, is very, very true. With everybody, we all have memories, and that will be with us. Thank you so much again. And I say thanks is a very little word for that. We are grateful. And we also thank our extended community of conservation architect and others who have joined today's focus group discussion on conservation of railway heritage assets. being adopted by RSDC. I would also like to thank all those who have sent feedback today and or in the past, especially Intact for their detailed constructive feedback and participation in today's webinar. We are going through all the feedbacks and will soon revert with the responses and suitable modification in the codes. I thank Mr. S.K. Lohia, MD and CEO, IRSDC, who is spearheading this mission and his vision and conviction as allowing us to go further into these areas. I would also like to thank Mr. R.K. Singh, Director Planning and Projects, who is conducting these sessions wonderfully and Sutradhar for most of the sessions. I would like to thank from IRSDC side, Mr. V.B. Sood for his excellent presentation, and Romi Roy, Joint General Manager, Urban Designer, and enthusiast in transit-oriented development, and again, her interest in conservation, architecture, etc. Our thanks to the Deep Sharma and Anil Kumarji, the Chief General Manager, who is looking after IT and his support. And of course, our team of architects and engineers, Rishabh, Utkarsh, Akash, Nitish, and Bilal, all these people, those who are helping us in preparation of this course. On behalf of IRSDC, I would also like to thank Shakti Foundation, Shakti Sustainable Energy Foundation, for its continued support in preparation of the course, and Creative Footprints for putting together the course and these webinars. And that means Adarsh Kapoor and Somi. Thank you for everyone for joining, and have a wonderful weekend. Not weekend, sorry. Have a wonderful week and stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In fact, when we started this whole exercise years ago, from the concept, so there were a lot of apprehensions whether we'll be able to do it or not, and how it will be taken, how we will implement, how would railways take it, how would other authorities take it. I think with today's comments from the panelists who have wealth of experience in their fields, it gives us a lot of solace that yes, baby steps that we have taken are in the right direction, and we need blessings of you all, and we will be able to create something which will be memorable, and we are very conscious of the fact that what we're creating is also a 100-year legacy which we are creating. So thank you, and we look forward to working with you all, because I'm sure in some form or the other we'll be working with you. And these, as I said in the beginning also, these codes are living codes, so it is not going to be cast in stone. So if there are, even if they are adopted after the consultation process, if there are any suggestions for improvement, we are always welcome. And every year we would be bringing out some amendments which are there. So we'll have structured process of bringing into account all the comment suggestion and doing the improvement to these codes, and maybe a thorough review at the end of 5 years. So that is how we are planning, so that our effort is something which is going to be replicated across other cities and maybe across other countries also. So I'm sure with the, as our Prime Minister says, that India will lead. So that is what is our vision, that we will work and our actions should speak louder than words. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vinita ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.